Welcome to Shatter.
Help me reach 5,000 subscribers. Support the video with a like and leave your thoughts in the comments. She laughed too loudly that night. The kind of laugh meant to slice through the air and make sure everyone heard it. We were sitting in a booth at Chili's, same spot we'd been 100 times before, but this time, she was performing. Her hand brushed the waiter's wrist when he refilled her water. He couldn't have been older than 22, a theater student type, too polished, too eager. And she leaned into it, eyes bright, the same eyes that had been cold for weeks at home. 2 weeks. That's how long she'd been distant, tired, busy, just not in the mood. I stopped asking. I started counting. And that night, watching her play that little game, I realized she wasn't trying to hurt me. She was trying to see if she still could. I didn't say a word. Not when she complimented his cologne. Not when he smiled a little too long. She wanted a scene. She got silence. I took a slow sip of my drink, felt the ice melt against my teeth, and watched her lose her rhythm. The more I didn't react, the more desperate her laugh became, like she was laughing just to fill the space I refused to give her. When the check came, she reached for her purse, pretending everything was fine. I beat her to it. One tap with Apple Pay, a short tone, and that was it, the sound of a door closing. I stood up, looked at her, and said nothing. No anger, no question, no goodbye. Just quiet. Her smile froze halfway, confusion spreading through her eyes. She asked if I was serious. I didn't answer. I turned, walked past the bar, and out into the night air. The sound of the door swinging shut behind me felt final. My Silverado was parked under a flickering streetlight. I sat inside for a moment, hands on the wheel, watching her through the restaurant window. She was still sitting there, staring at the check, at the empty seat across from her. The boy came back, awkward and unsure. She smiled at him again, but now it didn't land. The scene was over. I started the engine and drove off. No words, no second thoughts. Just the quiet hum of the road and a single, clean realization. Sometimes silence says everything you need to. The next morning, her messages started coming in waves. At first, they sounded casual, checking if I was okay, pretending last night didn't mean anything. Then the tone shifted. Questions, demands, accusations. I didn't reply to any of them. Not one. I let the notifications stack up on my iPhone screen until they disappeared behind the clock. Silence is loud when someone expects noise. I spent that day at one of my job sites. The smell of fresh lumber, the grind of saws, men calling out measurements. It all felt cleaner than anything waiting for me at home. I built things that stood. She built impressions that crumbled. The difference was finally clear. By noon, my foreman told me she had called the office. Said she was worried. They told her I was out on a project. Technically true. I didn't correct them. It's amazing how easy it is to disappear when you stop explaining yourself. That evening, I parked the truck a few miles outside town and watched the sun drop behind the unfinished frames of a new build. I thought about how much energy I'd spent trying to prove I cared. The late-night talks, the weekends canceled, the endless patience. She'd treated my effort like a background hum, only noticed when it stopped. At home, the Ring camera caught her pacing by the front door. She waited, arms crossed, checking her phone every few seconds. The blue light from the screen washed her face pale. I watched from my phone for a minute, then locked the app. I didn't know her an audience anymore. That night, I checked LinkedIn for the first time in months. Updated my status, delegated operations, taking time off the grid. It wasn't a lie. My company could run without me. I'd built it to last, even if I didn't. I turned off my phone after that. Total blackout. No texts, no calls. Just the hum of the truck outside my motel window and a single, steady thought looping in my head. She wanted control, but control only works on someone still playing the game. I wasn't. I'd already walked off the board. The days that followed were quiet in a way I hadn't felt in years. No questions. No pretending. Just the sound of my own thoughts, steady and calm. I rented a small place by the lake. Bare walls, a coffee maker, and nothing that reminded me of her. My Silverado was parked outside, coated in dust from the back roads. I didn't wash it. I liked the silence it carried. Her call stopped after a week. That's when I knew she'd moved on from panic to pride. She wasn't looking for me anymore. She was trying to make me look for her. I saw it in small ways. Her new posts on Instagram, dinners, open houses, the illusion of a perfect life continuing. But I knew that pattern. When someone performs that hard, it's not confidence. It's fear of being unseen. Meanwhile, I shifted everything quietly. My accounts, my contracts. I transferred operations to a new managing partner, a guy who'd been with me from the start. He didn't ask questions, just nodded when I said, "Keep it running." The company didn't need my face anymore. That was the point. One night, I opened Coursera on my laptop. Architecture courses. I'd always been fascinated by the way structure defined space. It felt symbolic, learning how to design something new while the old version of my life collapsed. I studied late, the glow of the screen reflecting off the lake through the open window. It wasn't loneliness. It was distance. And distance, for the first time, felt like peace. I knew she'd eventually come looking for some kind of closure. People like her always do. Not because they care, but because they can't stand unanswered questions. But when she found me, I wouldn't give her answers. I'd give her silence again, the kind that makes people see what words never could. Every night before I went to sleep, I'd check the Ring feed from the old house. Just once. The porch light would flicker, the street quiet. No movement. No trace of the person who used to fill that space with noise and need. I'd turn it off after 10 seconds, set the phone down, and let the darkness finish the sentence for me. 3 weeks passed before she finally showed up at the office. I wasn't there, of course, but my team told me everything later. She walked in like she owned the place. Heels sharp against the tile, smile rehearsed. Asked if I was around, like it was a casual visit. My assistant told her I was on extended leave, same phrase I'd used in my LinkedIn update. She tried to laugh it off, said something about taking time to recharge. But when she realized no one offered more information, the smile faded. She wasn't used to being out of the loop. I heard her next move from mutual friends. She started calling the clients we'd worked with together, pretending to check in, hoping someone would mention me. They didn't. I'd already made sure of that. Every number rerouted, every contact sealed. She was knocking on doors that no longer opened. Meanwhile, my days stayed simple. Mornings by the lake, black coffee, a notebook full of sketches from the Coursera courses. The lessons weren't just about buildings. They were about space, balance, foundation. Everything she and I had lost because one of us was always performing. The more I studied, the clearer it became. I'd been building my life on rented land. At night, I'd drive into town for groceries, sometimes stop by Chili's again, not to eat, just to park outside. I'd watch couples through the window, laughing, scrolling their phones. None of them knew the quiet power of walking away mid-scene. That place didn't haunt me anymore. It grounded me. One night, as I sat in the truck, a message popped up from an unknown number. Just 3 words. "We need closure." No name, but I didn't need one. I stared at the screen until it dimmed. Closure was her word for control. I wasn't giving her either. The next morning, I deactivated my phone completely. No trace, no signal. From that moment, she could only talk to silence. And silence, I'd learned, is the one thing that can't be manipulated. A month had passed before I heard what happened next. One of my suppliers mentioned it in passing, how the young waiter from Chili's had been bragging online about spending time with her. It was small-town gossip, easy to dismiss, but it made sense. She wasn't capable of being alone, only of filling silence with new noise. What she didn't understand was that some people weren't watching anymore. By then, my business was running smoother than ever. The new manager had tightened operations, even landed a new contract. My name was still on the documents, but my presence wasn't required. That was the beauty of it. I had built something that could survive my absence. Meanwhile, she was slipping. I saw her name less and less on real estate listings. A few clients quietly backed out of deals after her last public argument in a coffee shop. People notice energy, even when no one says it out loud. The woman who once controlled every room was now just a whisper in corners. One night, I opened my old email out of habit and found a message waiting. Not from her, but from the young waiter. He'd written something short, probably meant to sting. Guess she moved on from both of us. I didn't reply. I didn't even finish reading. The line wasn't worth the attention. That message wasn't about her or me. It was about someone else needing a reaction. I'd outgrown that. That same evening, I drove the truck down the back road behind my old neighborhood. The lights of our former house glowed faintly through the trees. I pulled up the Ring feed one last time. She was standing on the porch, alone, looking out at the driveway. No movement, no company. Just her and the quiet she used to fill with words. I closed the app, started the engine, and let the rumble fade into the night. I didn't feel victory or sadness or anything that required her to exist. I only felt stillness. She had built her life on attention. I had learned to live without it. And that difference was the real separation, one that no apology could bridge. Her downfall didn't happen suddenly. It came in quiet fragments, one after another, until everything she'd built on image started to collapse. The first sign was a rumor about her brokerage firm letting her go. Restructuring, they called it. But I knew the truth. When your reputation starts to crack, no one wants to stand next to you when it falls. She tried to save face online. Photos at brunch, captions about new beginnings, motivational quotes about growth. But there was something hollow behind every smile. The comments were fewer, the likes slower. The audience she'd once controlled was slipping away. I didn't take pleasure in it. I just watched it happen the way you'd watch rain clean a window, detached, silent, inevitable. Through a mutual contact, I heard she'd shown up at Chili's again. Same table, same booth. Alone this time. The waiter wasn't there anymore. Apparently, he'd left town for some acting gig in another state. The irony was almost poetic. She had returned to the stage, but the audience was gone. Around that time, one of her friends, an old acquaintance of mine, reached out. She said, "She's not doing well. Maybe you should call her." I thanked her and said nothing else. There was nothing to fix. You can't repair something that was never solid to begin with. I kept my focus on the present. My Coursera lessons had become a kind of meditation. I was designing a cabin model, a simple structure, balanced, minimal, nothing unnecessary. Every beam, every wall had purpose. It made me think about how much of life gets cluttered with things that don't hold weight until they collapse under their own performance. That weekend, I drove past the house one last time. The for sale sign stood crooked on the lawn. The windows were dark. The world had moved on without her, just as it should. For the first time in years, I felt light. The kind of calm that doesn't come from revenge or closure, but from absence. I didn't need her to understand what she'd lost. I just needed her to live long enough to feel the silence she once thought she could control. By the time fall came, she had vanished from the public eye almost completely. The woman who once filled every room now existed only in whispers and cached posts. I didn't search for her, but sometimes the past has a way of finding you. One night, I received an email from a mutual business contact asking if I'd heard she was starting over somewhere near the coast. I didn't answer. That phrase, starting over, didn't mean growth for her. It meant running from the echo of her own reflection. I kept my distance, but curiosity is a strange thing. A few weeks later, I checked the Ring feed again. It had been months since I'd opened it. The account was still active, still tied to that empty house. The porch was bare now, stripped of furniture, just a few leaves caught against the steps. For a moment, I watched the emptiness on the screen. Then I realized it wasn't hers anymore. It was mine, the silence I'd built piece by piece. My company was expanding under my new manager's leadership. I'd stepped back, but profits grew, and the team was stronger. The irony wasn't lost on me. When I stopped trying to control everything, everything started to work. That's when I understood what real presence was. It's not noise, not dominance, not attention. It's quiet stability. The kind that doesn't need validation to exist. At night, after finishing another Coursera module, I'd sit outside the cabin and watch the water shift under the moonlight. The truck sat parked in the same spot, engine silent, the metal cooling in the air. There was nothing left to fix, no one left to prove anything to. Then one morning, a letter arrived. Not an email, not a text, but an actual envelope, handwritten. No return address. The first line stopped me cold. "You disappeared so quietly that the silence still follows me." I folded it without finishing. There was nothing to respond to. She was still trying to turn absence into dialogue. I placed the letter in the fire pit and watched it burn down to ash. Some stories don't need an ending. They just need to stop being told. Winter came early that year, the kind that paints silence over everything. I hadn't seen her or heard from her since that letter, but her absence still moved through the air sometimes, faint and uninvited. One evening, while reviewing blueprints for a new project, I got a call from an unknown number. I almost ignored it, but something made me answer. A pause, then her voice, steady at first, then cracking on the edges. She said she'd been driving for hours and was near the lake. Said she needed to talk, just 5 minutes. I didn't hang up. I didn't agree, either. I let the silence stretch until she finally whispered, "I just want to understand what happened." I said nothing. After a few seconds, she realized I wasn't going to give her what she wanted. The line went dead. That was the last time she called. The next day, I found her car parked near the trail by the water. She wasn't inside. She'd walked down to the dock, standing where I usually watched the sunset. I stayed back, far enough not to be seen. She looked smaller somehow, fragile, stripped of her usual confidence. For a brief moment, I wondered if she finally saw it. How easy it was to lose something you never valued until it was gone. I didn't approach her. I couldn't. There was nothing left to say. This wasn't about forgiveness or revenge anymore. It was about final distance, the kind that isn't performed, it's lived. When she finally turned and walked back to her car, she didn't look around. Just left, slow and quiet. The sound of her tires on gravel faded into the cold air. That night, I reopened the Coursera course and finished my last module. Designing permanence through simplicity. The phrase lingered in my mind. That's what I'd done. In a way, stripped everything to the frame, removed what didn't hold weight. She had used noise to feel alive. I'd used silence to become whole. And now, standing at the edge of the lake, I realized the story was never about her losing me. It was about me finding peace without needing to be found. Weeks passed after that day by the lake. I didn't see her again, but I heard fragments of her life through others, small mentions that drifted my way, uninvited. Someone said she'd sold her car. Someone else said she was renting a small apartment downtown, working part-time. Her world had shrunk, and maybe for the first time, it matched her reality. I didn't feel pride in that. There's no satisfaction in someone else's collapse when all you ever wanted was honesty. But I knew she needed to fall, to see what control looks like when no one's there to give it back. My days had their own rhythm now. Early mornings, long drives, work that felt cleaner, simpler. I'd meet with my crew, review plans, and then disappear before lunch. I didn't need to be everywhere anymore. My absence had become part of how things functioned. The company didn't need my voice, it just needed my structure. One afternoon, I stopped by a hardware store in town. The cashier, a guy I'd seen before, mentioned seeing her. She didn't look like herself, he said. Didn't even recognize me at first. I nodded, said nothing. People like to test silence, to see if you'll fill it. I didn't. I paid and left. That night, I drove the truck back to the lake. The air was colder, the water sharp with frost. I sat there, headlights off, letting the quiet settle in. I thought about that night at Chili's, the cheap wine, the way she touched the waiter's wrist, the laugh that was meant to humiliate me. I remembered the moment I stood up, paid, and walked away. One simple motion that changed everything. Looking back, I realized the power wasn't in the leaving. It was in the stillness before it. The moment I decided I wouldn't respond, wouldn't match her performance. She thought silence was weakness. She didn't know it was discipline. By the time I drove back home, the road was empty, the world wrapped in darkness. And for the first time, I didn't see that night as an ending. It was an origin story, the moment I stopped existing for someone else and started existing for myself. Spring came quietly, without announcement. The lake thawed, the air softened, and for the first time in a long while, the silence around me didn't feel empty, it felt earned. I'd built a new life, without ceremony, one quiet choice at a time. My mornings belonged to work again, my evenings to stillness. Nothing dramatic, just peace. One morning, while I was reviewing new blueprints on my laptop, a notification appeared. A message request on LinkedIn. I hadn't used the app much since updating my status months ago. The name on the screen stopped me, hers. I hesitated, then opened it. The message was short. I understand now. That was it. No apology. No explanation. Just a line written by someone finally standing in the wreckage of their own choices. I didn't reply. There was nothing left to build between us. What she called understanding wasn't redemption, it was recognition. The moment she realized the silence she once resented was never punishment. It was consequence. Later that evening, I drove into town, parked near the same Chili's where everything had shifted. It looked the same neon lights, same crowd. But the wait was gone. I sat there for a while, watching people come and go, laughing, scrolling through their phones, chasing distractions. I felt nothing toward the place, and that nothingness was freedom. As I drove home, the sunset spilled over the highway, soft gold across the windshield. I thought about the letter, the calls, the lake. Every attempt she made to pull me back into the story. And how I'd resisted, not out of anger, but out of clarity. Some endings don't need noise. They just need boundaries. When I got home, I sat on the porch and watched the sky darken. I thought about all the times she'd demanded emotion as proof of love. The irony was that detachment had become my proof of strength. Before going inside, I whispered the words I never got to say that night, not to her, but to myself. I didn't disappear. I just stopped showing up where I wasn't respected. Then I closed the door, and for the first time, it felt like closing a chapter, not running from it. Silence wasn't my escape anymore. It was my peace. What would you have done in my place? If the story hit you, leave a like. And don't forget to subscribe. It only gets stronger from here.